Agenda, Board of Commissioners, City of Bowling Green, Kentucky, regular meeting, City Hall, April 20th, 2021 at 4:30. Calling to order tonight. We'll begin with an invocation and a pledge from Ms. Commissioner Sue Perigin.
Please stand with me. And we'll pray if you so choose. Lord, please bless this gathering and each of the community leaders here to do the work on behalf of the betterment of our beloved Bowling Green. Please help us to be able to listen and discern and finally come to the best conclusion for each agenda item presented tonight. Finally, be with our military and public safety professionals that risk their lives daily for our protection, as well as all who are suffering illness and grieving loss. It's in your name we pray. Amen. You'll face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perigin. Just before we begin, one of my favorite people that I have followed, read several of his books. I'll read the quote and then I'll tell you who it is. There are no secrets to success. It is a result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure. And that is from General Colin Powell. We will do roll call, please.
Commissioner Perigin.
Here.
Commissioner Bailey.
Here.
Commissioner Beasley Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Mayor Alcott.
Here. Mr. Meisel, do you have any presentations at this time?
I do not, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have the minutes from April 1st, 2021, and they have been there. Everyone's had a chance to review.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Bailey. And we will go ahead and call roll call for approval.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Municipal Order Number 2021-46.
Municipal order approving the career path advancement of Barry Basham to the position of Operations Technician 3 in the Public Works Department.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Perigin, second by Commissioner Hill. Is there any discussion, Mr.
As
Marshall?
you all know, we created a career path advancement program years ago in the Public Works Department. I'd like to ask Greg Meredith, our Public Works Director, to come up and present these two promotions. Greg?
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure today to recommend career path advancement of Mr. Barry Basham from his current OMT 2 position to the vacant OMT 3 position created in our current FY budget within Public Works in the Operations Division. Barry began working with the city as a laborer back in 2011. 6 months later, he was promoted to an Operation Maintenance Tech 1. In 2016, he was again promoted to an OMT 2. Since that time, Barry has taken a more active leadership role within our Operations Division. Not only has he completed all the necessary requirements for promotion to an Operator Maintenance Tech 3, but he's also showed dedication to duty and that's second to none. He's experienced in most all of our safety-sensitive tasks and the equipment that we employ in operations. He's often relied upon to teach and mentor less experienced employees. In his off-duty time, he enjoys working at home on the farm. In accordance with our career path guidelines, it's my pleasure today to recommend the promotion of Barry Basham to the position of OMT 3. Take any questions.
Discussion at this time?
Congratulations. Oh, we haven't voted. Sorry.
Are they here today?
They are not here.
They are not here. Thank you, Greg. All right, so no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Municipal Order Number 2021-47.
Municipal order approving the career path advancement of Christopher Taylor to the position of Operations Technician 1 in the Public Works Department.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Beasley Brown. And Mr. Meredith?
Again, it's my pleasure to recommend Mr. Christopher Taylor from his current Laborer 2 position to an OMT 1 position, again within our Public Works Operation Division. Chris began working with the city as a part-time seasonal employee in our Parks and Recs department prior to his full-time appointment with Public Works in October of last year. According to our OMT job manual, a Laborer 2 with 6 months of experience and the successful attainment of his commercial CDL license, his CDL, the employee is eligible to become an OMT 1. Additionally, he has shown excellent job performance and a willingness to learn in a wide variety of tasks in the Operation Division. His dedication to public service also includes being a volunteer fireman with the Richardsville Fire Department. So we're glad Chris is a part of our team. In accordance with our career path guidelines, it's my pleasure today to recommend also Mr. Christopher Taylor for the classification of OMT 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Municipal Order Number 2021-48.
Municipal order approving the probationary appointments of Harry Depp, Jesse James, and John Lyons to the position of Laborer 2 in the Public Works Department.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Perigin.
We currently have 4 vacancies in our operations division, and we went out and did a search and had some good applications. And we have 3 qualified candidates here that we would like to propose hiring, and I'd like to ask Aaron Holsey to come make a recommendation of these appointments, these 3 gentlemen. I just met, Mr. Depp is here, just met him a few minutes ago, so Aaron, you want to take this over?
Or good afternoon. We do have 4 vacancies in the operations, and we do generally recruit for the entry-level position of Laborer 2. And so we went and we did our normal recruitment process, and we received 17 applications. We interviewed 8. Initially offered to 4, but through the pre-employment process, we are presenting 3 to be appointed today, so I'm sorry I didn't have time to update your memo. But with us today is Harry Depp, if you can please stand, who is already an employee in the Parks Department in a part-time position, so one of those great success stories that I love, that we can bring people in that part-time capacity and then they can join us full-time. Also with us tonight is John Lyons. I'd like to stand, and not able to be with us tonight, but also being appointed is Jesse James. There is a brief bio in the memo regarding these gentlemen, so I'm here if you have any questions.
Aaron? Questions? Question?
Congrats.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations, guys.
Welcome
Sounds
to
like you're going to get some yes votes here, but we'll, roll call.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Congratulations, and thank you for continuing to work. Municipal Order Number 2021-49.
Municipal order approving the reappointments of Brian Denning and Vivian Grice to the Bowling Green Audit Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Beasley Brown, second by Commissioner Perigin. I'd like to take this one. This is reappointments for Audit Committee. Ms. Schaller Ward, we had conversations, and she highly recommended that we move forward with Vivian Grice and Brian Denning. I talked to them both on the telephone. They have accomplished a tremendous amount of work for our city, and our audit reports are without a doubt incredible from your work, and I just want to make a testament from that. It's a book about this thick, and our city goes through grueling reports, but this committee helps us and looks out for the betterment of our city. So I want to say thank you. These are my recommendations, and they both would like to continue to stay on the board. Any questions?
Just want to echo your thanks to the audit committee and, for making sure that we are digging in and taking good care of the taxpayer dollars. And I'm just so grateful for their work they do as volunteers. And I know it's a lot of hours, and so just really grateful.
All right, roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Municipal Order Number 2021-50.
Municipal order authorizing and accepting bid number 2021-24 for Bowling Green Downtown Improvements Phase 2 from Scott and Murphy Incorporated of Bowling Green, Kentucky, in the amount of $1,589,544.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Perigin, second by Commissioner Hill.
As you all know, we've been planning for this Phase 2 for the last year or so. We, I think, completed Phase 1 back at the end of 2019. We feel like that was a success story with Fountain Square and the surrounding streets. I think we went Morris Alley, Capitol Alley. With this phase, we are planning to go down to 6th Avenue and over to Center Street and over to, Center Street and over to Chestnut Street with this project. This would include some sidewalk improvements, landscaping, stormwater modifications, even some asphalt paving and roadway striping for bike lanes like we have along College and State. We went out for bids on this and received one bid from Scott and Murphy for $1,589,544. This is within our budget, so we felt very comfortable with this bid, and we have funds set aside already in our downtown project fund to cover this. So we are recommending acceptance of this bid from Scott and Murphy for $1,589,544. This would all get started very soon and be completed by the end of this calendar year. And Greg Meredith is here to answer any questions you might have about this. It's getting ready to go.
Isel, have any questions?
I'm going to say something about how excited I am about the future of downtown. We've got lots of good things that we're talking about, and you know, I just am just super excited about how it looks, how it's going to look, and some of the things that we're getting ready to be able to do down there as a result of all of our investment. Really exciting.
All right. Further ado, roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Municipal Order Number 2021-51.
Municipal order authorizing the submission of an application for Homeland Security grant funds related to the CBRNE equipment project through the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security for the purchase of hazardous material equipment for the fire department in an amount up to $16,796.38.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Beasley Brown, second by Commissioner Hill. Discussion?
For those of you all that want to know what the CBRN, I would call it, means, it's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear and explosive is the acronym for that.
CBRNE is what we call it in the military.
Exactly.
All good stuff.
So, important stuff. So the fire department has worked with Nick Cook on a grant through the Homeland Security program. We are hoping to submit for $16,796 for some hazmat equipment pertaining to emergency leak control kits when we have spills and hazardous materials that get out there, and also looking to purchase replacement seals for the current leak control kits, which are approximately 20 years old, which is not good, but they're still going to be repurposed for backup for in the event there's multiple incidents that are going on. Chief Colson is here tonight, as well as Nick Cook, and they can answer any questions you might have on this grant application. There is no match on this grant, so this is a really good grant, as usual.
Significant
With
amount
Homeland
as
Security.
well. Kudos and appreciation for leaning forward. I will tell you, CBRNE is something that we never want to use, but we need to be prepared to use it in case of that comes to our community. So thank you, and I applaud you for this effort. No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Municipal Order Number 2021-52.
Municipal order authorizing the submission of an application for Homeland Security grant funds related to the CBRNE equipment project through the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security for the purchase of an uninterruptible power supply for the police department in an amount up to $62,860.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Perigin, second by Commissioner Beasley Brown.
This is another Homeland Security grant for the police department. They are wishing to cover their UPS, which is uninterruptible power supply, at our Greenwood station, which is our backup station for our 911 center. When power goes out, this is the thing that kicks in for a few seconds to allow the generator to kick on, where we have no loss of power and no loss of data, that sort of thing. Again, this one is a no match, and this would cover a big portion or all of the UPS equipment to install out at our Greenwood station, which serves as our backup for 911. Chief Delaney is here, as well as Nick Cook, that worked on this, that can answer any questions you might have.
I have a quick question. Does this only cover Greenwood, or is this, do we have this in all of our stations?
We did this at 911 Kentucky with a prior grant a year or so ago. It's already been replaced down there. This is would be the last one.
Okay. Well, I would think that would be really important for us to have that everywhere.
Yeah, this is more of our IT side of 911 that covers us on any reason that we would have to close this one or shut this one down temporarily and switch over to the backup at Greenwood.
Mr. Meisel, so does that mean that we don't have, and I apologize, I'm new, but is it just those two that we have a backup at, or do we have other stations that we have backups at that also need to be changed?
These are like the computer rooms for the 911 system, so these are the only two locations.
Okay, thank you.
Kentucky Street's number 1, Greenwood Fire Station's number 2.
Second, okay.
Also the annex for the IT room.
Annex,
there at the annex, so we
there's
have
also a
3.
computer room there
So it's
too.
3?
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-13. This is our second reading. This is also a binding vote.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning tracts of land containing 4.3658 acres from RE residential estate and F floodplain to RM4 multifamily residential and F floodplain located on Old Scottsville Road, presently owned by MFG Bowling Green Land LLC.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Perigin. If you recall, last time we had 2 attorneys present. I believe they're both here. There was a vote. There was some discussion, and this is open for discussion, and our attorneys are here to answer any questions that the commissioners may have. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, there's no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
No.
Beasley Brown.
No.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Ordinance number BG 2021-14, first reading, non-binding.
Ordinance amending Code of Ordinances. Ordinance amending Chapter 5, Animals of the City of Bowling Green Code of Ordinances.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Perigin, second by Commissioner Hill. Mr. Meisel?
Several years ago, we determined that we needed to revise this Chapter 5 pertaining to our animal ordinance. So we put together a group consisting of a local veterinarian, the Humane Society, some animal control division staff, and some citizens. And we evaluated some KRS law pertaining to animals and ordinances. And this group that we put together came up with some recommendations. And I'd like to hand this off to Brent Childers that worked with that group and coordinated all of this and put it into this ordinance. This has not been updated very recently, so this is something we felt needed to be done just to clean up a few areas, and I'll let Brent cover those areas and answer any questions you might have.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. City Managers. Kind of go through these in some broad topics as we talk through this. This isn't something that we have updated in some time. Animal control moved to NCS about 6 years ago whenever we moved to Reservoir Hill. Previous to that, it was housed in the police department, so it was a function of police services. whenever it came over to NCS, so it has much more of a neighborhood-centric focus, since that's kind of how the department is set up and organized. So we really wanted to look at what does our ordinance do, what does it not do, what do people want it to do that it doesn't do or can't do, is also part of it, but also really try to modernize, because we saw things changed over time. We worked with this group of citizens and some specialists and also our staff, and was also helpful. Mary, who is one of our animal control officers now, was one of our first animal control officers years ago and helped write the last update. So she understood the context of when that was written and some of the issues that staff at that time were trying to solve. And now we have different issues that we're trying to solve. So I'll kind of go through this a little bit and some of these big things and entertain any questions you all have. So when it comes to tethers, at that time, whenever this was first drafted, there was a different, animals were taken care of in different ways at that time in the city. What we see now is the evolution of things. And at the time of the original ordinance, there were no underground fences. Those didn't exist. So just the way that someone would confine an animal, primarily dogs, to their property has changed because the market has changed. So we wanted to allow tethers as part of that with restrictions. So tethers would be a fixed point with a swivel, and there's restrictions on chain size, length, access for the dog, things like that. We use the same standard that we have for kennels. So kennels were allowed to use tethers in a kennel facility, so we adopted that same standard and wanted to make sure that we were balancing a person's ability to confine their animal to comply with the law, but also the health and welfare of the animal. That's what animal control does, is look out for the well-being of the animal, but also the well-being of the neighborhood. Living in a dense urban environment, the actions of one animal on one property impact those of the neighboring properties. I'm sure you all have had plenty of barking dog calls and other animal calls over the years as commissioners, so you know what I'm talking about. The other thing, there was a big growing trend that wasn't an issue several years ago, poultry or chickens. We have allowed chickens in the city of Bowling Green for years, never had a rule against it, and it was never an issue for us until chickens became popular. And in the last several years, we've seen this trend of what we call backyard chickens. So backyard chickens, with somebody living in more of an urban style living, but having chickens to raise eggs so that they could have fresh eggs in the morning for breakfast to feed their family. It's clean, it's green, it's sustainable, all those things. We see this in neighborhoods all across Bowling Green. This is not one specific neighborhood. This is very much widespread across multiple demographics of Bowling Green. This is a common trend we see. When it was all feeling good until people started having lots of chickens. Lots and lots of chickens. So the rule that we had in place currently was you could have chickens, they just had to stay on your property. Well, that created neighborhood issues whenever the chickens got off the property, and we're chasing chickens literally down the street trying to capture them and collect them. So we still wanted to allow people to have chickens. We still wanted people the ability to have that farm fresh type eggs, but we didn't want to have the production of more chickens. And so we wanted to see the limit on the number of chickens that's in this recommendation, but also the limitation on roosters that are used in the production of additional chickens, and roosters crow. We all grew up learning that in our nursery rhymes, and that you wake up when the rooster crows. Well, that's all fine and good on the farm. That's different whenever you're 100 feet away from your neighbors and they don't want to wake up whenever the chicken crows. So we want to limit what we call crowing fowl, so not allow those in the city limits because they're not integral to the production of eggs. The other part, as I move down, is cruelty. Cruelty is listed in state law. And depending on the elements of the crime, whenever we do have cruelty cases, we prosecute those through the county attorney's office or the Commonwealth attorney's office. They carry much different penalties and give our officers greater enforcement action to take care of those cases. So we didn't feel like it was necessary to have it in city ordinance when state law already covered it. And then the other one was just some cleanup in the nuisances and really trying to define what is an animal nuisance when it relates to barks. Dogs bark. I cannot keep dogs from barking. Animal control cannot keep dogs from barking. But really, what we were trying to do is define when does dog barking become a nuisance, and trying to set that line so that our staff can then address those issues and not just every time a dog barks. So those are the real big elements of the Chapter 5 revision that is before you. This is something we've been working on and tried to get to this point for some time, and I told them we were going to get this done, we were going to get this on the agenda, and we were going to get this heard. So with that, I'll entertain any questions or comments you all might have.
Is this something, Brent, that they write into their HOAs also? I mean, is this,
Very well could be. I'm sure that there are some HOA-type covered developments that would not allow the raising of any type of livestock.
chickens and things like that?
Yes, yes.
Right. I mean,
But not every neighborhood that we have is covered by an HOA.
Right.
But I could see several of our HOAs having, or the developer at the time, either binding elements or development plan conditions that would restrict some
well,
of
the
these
HOA
activities.
could take it even further and say, no chickens at all.
That is
Not-
correct. They can go above and beyond what the requirements that the city would put into place.
Saying that for anybody in an HOA that's out there that, you know. That's,
Brett, do we have a couple of our control officers here?
We do. We have Mary Hudson and Katja Fields, our two animal control officers. And I will tell you, these ladies do a fantastic job. If I was a dog running through the streets, I would not want either one of those two wrestling me. So they're the ones that will go in there and grab the dog, do what they have to do to protect the citizens of Bowling Green. So I appreciate the opportunity to recognize them and the work that they do. Much of the time, their work goes very much unnoticed, unless you're the person that is being victimized by someone else's animal or something like that. So thank you, Mayor, for
we
the
give them a
opportunity.
hand?
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Please, yes.
Thank you for working out the crowing issue. I just had a call about that 2 weeks ago, and so it was good to know that we were in the works of trying to solve that problem, because I love that folks can raise chickens and, find a way to be, sustainably take care of their family, but also make sure that, yes, the crowing issue can be solved.
Right.
And then secondly, will you just reaffirm that the removal of this animal cruelty language, it doesn't mean that we don't care or trying to not prevent animal
That's correct.
cruelty. It's this, that this is a stronger, we go after it at this stronger level as a state statute.
Absolutely, be glad to, because I understand that could cause some pause of seeing people say, "Oh, well, you're removing cruelty." No, we're removing it from a city ordinance. It is still state law, and we have charged felony crimes for cruelty to animals. We have charged through the county attorney's office as misdemeanors. It depends on the elements of the case and what level that goes to. And so if we have cruelty type cases where someone is actually being excessively cruel to an animal, we will charge through those offices to have stiffer penalties and greater, then it goes to the circuit court or the district court for adjudication, as opposed to coming back to the code enforcement board. So we felt like that was a better avenue to address cruelty cases for the protection and well-being of the animals here in the city of Bowling Green.
Yeah, Brent, that's inside the city limits, so.
That is
Because
correct.
there is a case over there in Mitchell Heights that's a county that somebody killed a dog for eating one of their chickens, and it was perfectly okay. Right, but that was considered livestock, and according to the state, and I wish that we would push that a little bit harder, because out in the county, there's lots of neighborhoods. That's not livestock, I don't define livestock, the state did, but it goes back to the days when the folks that lived out in the county were farmers, and if a, dog came into your farm and ate up your livestock, why, you had the right to deal with it. And so I don't, I'm not, it happened over there, and it was a beloved pet.
So just to reaffirm your point, this is for the city limits
Right.
only.
And make
We
sure-
only respond and answer calls in the city limits of Bowling Green. So the 40 square miles that we cover is what this ordinance would cover also. All right, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All right, no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-15, or first reading, non-binding.
Ordinance amending Code of Ordinances. Ordinance repealing existing Chapter 12 and approving revised version of the City of Bowling Green Code of Ordinances, Chapter 12, Fire Prevention, to make various changes.
So move. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Perigin.
Mayor, while Chief Colson is making his way to the podium, I would like to take this time to say that this is, I think, Chief Colson's last BOC meeting with us. He will be riding off into the sunset later on this month and headed off to another career. He's retiring, and I'd like to personally thank him for all of the hard work that he's put in these last, 6 years, Jason?
Last couple of weeks, I've been working really.
That too. He's been clearing off all these, knocking off all these to-do things before he leaves, and that's rare when somebody tells you they're leaving. They're like, who cares? Not this guy. So Jason has dealt with a lot of things in his tenure as chief, and I'm firsthand witness that it is a tough, tough job, and Jason has passed it with flying colors and done a lot of great stuff for the Bowling Green Fire Department, and has put the Bowling Green Fire Department in a really, really good place. And I'd like to thank him for that, his hard work and dedication. Jason, we don't have a trip to give to you or anything like that, but
A watch.
we will be getting some things to you here pretty soon before you leave. But this is Jason's pretty much last official big project that he's finishing up for us, and we try to, as we mentioned, we try to revise a couple chapters a year in our Code of Ordinances book. This one in particular has not been revised since the 90s, I believe. It was a small revision in the 90s, but this was originally put together in 1980. And so Jason has willingly taken on this task of getting this done before he leaves. And this has been a bear to deal with. It's very technical, but this is Chapter 12 pertaining to our fire prevention and fire services, and I'm going to hand this off to Jason to kind of cover the highlights and answer any questions you might have. But Jason, thank you again. You've been great to work with, and I wish you all the best. So.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you for the applause. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the support I've had over the last 5 years and the last 26 years as being a city employee. This really is a great place to work, and it's been a very rewarding career, and I'm humbled by your applause. So,
You'll change your mind.
I meant too far now. So, anyhow, as the city manager mentioned, this Chapter 12 was originally adopted back in 1980, had a minor revision in the late 1990s as it related to mutual aid, and then former Chief Gary Brown implemented the Burn Victims Fund in 2003, and that was kind of the only revision to Chapter 12. So the original Chapter 12, I was thumbing through it earlier today, and it talks about the firemen being the only individuals who could ride on a moving vehicle. So this is dated back to when firefighters used to ride on the tailboards of fire trucks. So so it's got a little age to it, and it talks about fires and wooden floors and some unique stuff. So, but as you know, fire prevention and the things that we deal with, it implements there are lots of code standards, regulations as it relates to fire protection, fire prevention. And with the help of the fire prevention staff, the command staff at the fire department, city manager's office, city clerk, legal, all of you all sitting here, along with NCS, the building department, the planning commission, even some general contractors. This is kind of a cumulative effort of trying to piece all those together to help guide where we need to be for 2021. So I'll kind of narrate through some things related to this. Hopefully you've had a chance to skim through that and perhaps you have questions. But early in the proposed Chapter 12, we adopted Kentucky Standards of Safety, which really serves as the basis for our fire inspection program. This provides the enforcement or the background for us going out and being able to do fire safety inspections to try and ensure that the public buildings in our community are safe for people to be shopping, to be visiting, to do whatever they do. We incorporate an inspection fee for deficiencies in the proposed Chapter 12. This is new. Right now, the basis of our inspections are, it's violating code or some standard. We go re-inspect, we go re-inspect, we go re-inspect, and they may or may not fix that. So if it's not a major issue, then we continue to allow them to operate. But this gives us a little enforcement or the inspection fees. The third time that we go back, then we're able to start charging fees. So hopefully we come to some resolve with the deficiency. So that's kind of the standards of safety and incorporating and adopting that in 12-2. 12-3 gets into fire department access roads. Essentially, all the buildings that are built in Bowling Green, we need to be able to access them through roadways, through parking lots, so on and so forth. So we discuss how much space we need, how wide those roads need to be, the types of clearances, so on and so forth. And essentially, we adopt NFPA Chapter 1, the 2012 edition, as we incorporate that by reference. So these aren't just our rules. We use a National Fire Protection Association standards as our guide for what is good for fire department access. We discuss gates and barriers. We are implementing some Knox padlocks and Knox key switches for these fire department access roads or subdivisions or whatever those might be that basically put gates across our access. There's nothing worse than being sitting outside a gate to a subdivision and we can't get in because an electronic sensor on that's supposed to sense a siren for a fire truck isn't functioning, and so on and so forth. So we've implemented several things to help us gain access quickly to buildings and be able to open doors or get to important parts of those buildings without having to break down a door. So it's much cheaper to open it with a key than to force entry. We get into fire department water supply, and essentially what we're doing is basically using an adopted standard to determine how much water we need to have in the area of a building that's being built based off its size, its construction type, its occupancy use, so on and so forth. We have increased the fire hydrant locations and distribution. We've instead of what's currently 300 foot from a hydrant to a building, we're allowing more space. In the 1980s, we were carrying fire hose that was 3 inches. Now we carry fire hose that is 5 inches. So that obviously has less friction loss and allows us to get more water through our hose. So those things allow us to require less fire hydrants be put in because we can basically move those hydrants through large diameter hose. We do implement a firefighter building marking system on new buildings, but also existing buildings. As we do our fire safety inspections, we wish to go back and add basically a placard. If you ever traveled out of town to various states, you'll see a placard with like a Maltese cross on a lot of structures. Basically similar to those, you've probably seen them, not sure what they mean. Kentucky does not have that, but hopefully with your approval, the city of Bowling Green will. What that does is helps firefighters recognize that building contains construction features that are susceptible to early collapse when under fire, conditions of fire. So we're asking for permission for approval to implement that in the city of Bowling Green. We will provide the signs to existing and new businesses, but we want to adopt that as a standard for our community. Later in the chapter, we update our standards related to open burning. reinforcing that, fires for warmth, cooking, and camping are okay. Construction site warming fires and fires for training employees do not require a permit. And we also have other things to make sure that Chapter 12 aligns with the Kentucky open burning laws. Hazardous materials is also in Chapter 12 that talks about our response cost recovery. We also discuss false fire alarms and applicable fees to those after, well, it's also covered in another chapter of ordinance, but we also discuss it in ours. Mutual aid and automatic aid, and how we go about providing aid to other agencies in Warren County, outside Warren County, and also throughout the state or other states. And last but not least, the Burn Victims Fund, as I mentioned earlier, was originally established in 2003 by former Fire Chief Gary Brown. It was originally overseen by a board, but I don't think that board is, I'm not familiar with that board. But basically, this is a fund that's available to help provide financial support for individuals who suffer burns from a fire. So we're trying to revise that, give the oversight of that fund to the next fire chief and the city manager, with reports provided to the Board of Commission. So I believe that's a fast summary of Chapter 12. Perhaps you have questions. I'll be glad to do my best to answer those. If not, I've got backup, I hope, behind me, unless they left. So. Still here.
Chief Colson, I appreciate that. I've only been on the board just shortly. I hate to see that you're leaving, and you look young to be retiring. So I'm not sure what your next stage in life is going to be. But I only have like one question. So the 12 subsection 6 of the fire code of the change, basically it's just coming in compliance with the rule that's already there for the state, or the regulations that are already there.
That's correct. There's been some confusion with the way the former Chapter 12 was written. I think it basically, it alluded that you couldn't even have a small campfire that was contained to a fire pit at your home. So this makes this more friendlier and allows that and provides clarification. So the former Chapter 12 was basically said you can't set any fire inside the city limits. So we're trying to, within limitations, we're saying those are okay, but it certainly aligns with the KRS, or the Kentucky Administrative Regulations related to open burning.
Thank you, Chief Colson.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners?
Appreciate it. That's all I can say. Thank you. Thank you for leaving us in such good shape with our fire department. It's been fun to work with you for
Team effort. It's not
the
just
last
me.
5 years. It has been,
We've got a great
Really good.
organization. So.
yeah, I agree.
Well, a great leader never finishes until they hand off that baton. So my testament and appreciation to you continuing to fight the fight, take care of your firefighters, and take care of our community until the last day you hand that baton over, even if it is an interim. And I know we have some good interims that are going to step up to the plate, because a great leader always has someone second command ready to take the helm. So thank you, Chief Colson. All right, roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-16, first reading, non-binding.
Ordinance relating to budget amendment. Ordinance approving amendment number 3 to the City of Bowling Green, Kentucky annual operating budget for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bailey, second by Commissioner Hill. Mr. Mizel?
From time to time, we have need to amend our budget. This would be our third amendment for fiscal year 21 that started July 1st of last year. Katie has put together these amendments covering a little bit of everything: grants, donations, COVID funding, some ITA land sales, the bond issue. But I'm going to turn it over to Katie. At your preference, she can give you an overview or answer questions, however you want to do it. But Katie, thank you.
I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I have one question.
Absolutely.
I've already asked this question, but it's for the public's benefit. On page 3 at the bottom, it says that we're transferring money from the general fund to the BG Cares Small Business Fund. And what we had talked about was BG, or the CARES funding that came to us funding this program. So just to clarify for the public.
That's correct. We had applied for the initial CARES funding that was provided from the federal government through the state back last June, I believe, is when we received that money. And so it was basically a reimbursement for our public safety personnel costs in police and fire. It was about $4.9 million. That went into general fund and went to fund balance at the end of that fiscal year. So when we started talking about how do we want to utilize these funds to help the community, that's where the small business grant program came to fruition. Brent Childers, Nick Cook, and some of the other staff in the finance department made it a priority to try and get a program together. And we basically utilized about $2.4 million of that CARES reimbursement that we received for this program. The initial amount was, I think, $1.885 million, and we ended up getting such a good response in all the applications that we decided let's fund all the applications that we had received through the end of February. And so that was the additional $356,000, and you had pre-approved up to $500,000 to get us through. So that's where that money originated from the general fund, but we moved it to our job development program in order to pay for those small business grants.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Further discussion?
I expect there'll be at least one more budget amendment, very possibly a fifth, depending on when we get our stimulus money from the federal government. But we'll certainly have at least one more to close out the year.
Thank you. All right, no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-17, this is our first reading and is non-binding.
Ordinance amending agreement related to the City County Planning Commission. Ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute amended and restated agreement for the establishment of the joint City County Planning Commission for Warren County and the joint City County Board of Adjustments.
So moved. Second.
By Commissioner Perigin, second by Commissioner Hill.
And I can
Please.
get it started.
Thank you, Mr.
This is a proposed revision to the agreement with the planning and zoning as far as the makeup of the board. The major change here is we're going from what was originally approved as a 1 mile buffer for each incorporated city to vote on in any planning and zoning changes in their area. The mayor has worked with multiple mayors from Woodburn, Plum Springs, Oakland, Smiths Grove. The county is on board with this. We are kind of the first one out of the box to make this amendment to this joint City-County Board of Adjustments and the joint City-County Planning Commission. So this is in your packet. I believe the version that's in your packet stems from the original changes that were proposed on the voting makeup of the public hearings at Planning and Zoning, as well as the change to the territory, the incorporated territory plus 3/4 of a mile buffer. Mayor, do you have anything to add? You worked with
I'd
a
like
lot
to
of phone
say,
calls, I know, and emails with the other mayors.
you know, each of the mayors represent, however, their councils have to also, just as our body has to approve it on a majority vote. So it's not a guarantee that this will work. However, I do believe diplomacy is the first form of all communication in order to be able to create better governments. This enables our cities to have a large radius that is over the circumference of their actual city threshold. And so they're able to go where their cities may be less than a quarter mile, they're able to go out 3/4 a mile from their vicinities for anything affecting their community. Two of the communities, Plum Springs and Smith Grove, were concerned about the bubble area in between their 3/4 miles and 3/4 out from both. So if you imagine, those bubbles are enclosed, so they have no man's land in between their jurisdictions. So if there's development going on around them, they have the say in the Planning and Zoning Commission, their representatives, to be able to have a vote and a stakeholder into that. Plum Springs also has, area to be able to come into the city of Bowling Green. However, they feel like that is in their backyard, and things within the 3/4 mile affect their community, and they would like to have a say-so. This is the most amenable means that we can come forward without a renewment of investment from their actual planning and zoning contributions. Right now, their contribution is to pay for their member that sits on the board, and that's to recoup. I believe it's $100 that they recoup for working on that planning and zoning. The city and both the county put in over, I believe it's $100,000 each that it cost us for our planning and zoning, and our smaller cities are able to benefit from that government form that allows them to utilize something that our city and our county benefit from greatly, but when they're doing their planning and zoning, they can also benefit from that. So this is the best way for equity, ensure that the taxpayers are getting their best value of return on their dollars.
I just want to thank you, Mayor Alcott, for reaching out to our surrounding communities and having those conversations and getting their input and making the amendments, incorporating the feedback they gave. And I'm just really grateful for your leadership in this way. Thank you so much.
Further discussion, roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-18, this is our first reading, non-binding.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 6.2686 acres from AG Agriculture to RS1D Single Family Residential located at 0 Marlin Drive, presently owned by Java Properties LLC.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Perigin. Any discussion on this one?
Just briefly, do we know if there's any sinkholes around that, I guess, the area? And if there are, what is the plan to make sure that the groundwater is, where's it going to be stored at?
So at
Mr. Peterson?
Yes, thank you. At this stage, the rezoning, sinkholes aren't necessarily identified. That'll come with the next step. Should this pass, then the site will be engineered, the site plan will be developed, and any sinkholes that are found would have to be mitigated according to process outlined in the subdivision regulations, and will also be inspected by both our department and Bowling Green Public Works.
Great. Any further questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-19, our first reading, non-binding.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 0.22 acre from RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential to GB General Business located at 228 Riverwood Avenue, presently owned by Jeffrey Harrison, with Tom Holmes as the applicant.
So moved. Second.
By Commissioner Perigin, second by Commissioner Hill. Do we have any discussion, Mr. Meisel, or are we?
No, sir, I think this was a unanimous vote. Is that correct, Ashley?
From our planning and zoning?
It's a planning and zoning first reading.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple questions for Mr. Peterson.
Sure.
So I am looking at the existing land use and map. And so could you just talk about the lots around it, how it's vacant across the street and on the one side?
Looking at the future land use map, is that what you?
Existing land use.
Existing land use, okay. Yes, so of course, directly in front of this is where the new, I think it's the Funky Bean, I believe is the name of the coffee shop. Directly to the south of it is in the process of being built as a Dunkin' Donuts. And then behind it was where they're purchasing the house and expanding their parking lot. On the other side of Riverwood Avenue there, you'll see a vacant lot. And then, of course, on the other side of the side street there that's not named on there, that is the Kroger development there. And then, of course, across the bypass is Medical Center and WKU Nursing and all of that development there.
Yes, and in the evidence presented, it talked about a fence that would be, it's already existing, that buffers in a garage on that single family that is adjacent to it. Is it a privacy fence or how tall is it?
They've committed to doing a privacy fence or maintaining the privacy fence that is there. There is also, will be an incompatible use buffer between this expansion and that, although it's been varied to be a little bit lessened. It will still require the plantings there as well to kind of buffer that property from the expanded parking lot and speaker and all of that.
And it also mentioned that the speaker for the drive-through that they're adding is going to be pointing away from the single-family residence. So are you able to distinguish from this sort of design here on page, well, it's right after the future land use map, where it is and where it's pointing, or is it not?
Sure, the site layout is on there, so they would enter in off of that side street, which is also Riverwood Avenue. It is labeled on there. So come off the bypass onto Riverwood, and then you would turn into this property. You would not actually, there is no access on the neighborhood side of Riverwood. So then they would come in and circle around to that property where, if you imagine the menu board being on the driver's side, facing towards Kroger's.
Towards
Not-
Kroger's?
Yes,
Okay, thank you so much. Those are all my questions.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any further discussions? All right, roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Alcott.
Yes. Ordinance number BG 2021-20. This is our first reading and is non-binding.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning tracts of land containing 13.50 acres from RS1A Single Family Residential to RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential and GB General Business located at 603 and 611 Highland Way and 2310 Nashville Road, presently owned by Sam Potter Jr. and Jeffrey and Betsy Harned.
Second.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Perigin. We have two attorneys present with us tonight. We have Mr. Frank Steinbeck and we have Mr. Tad Perdue. Mr. Perdue is representing our developer, Sam Potter, and Frank Steinbeck is representing the people. As we have accomplished this year, and we are allowing, this is a non-judicial, semi-quasi event that we are reviewing the vote from the planning and zoning. And so we have two attorneys representing. We are allowing each attorney 15 minutes to present. I will allow the attorneys to determine which one they would like to go first. And then we will hear from both attorneys, and then we will have the opportunity to ask questions from the Board of Commissioners to each attorney after both presentations have been made. Am I hitting that right? Ms. Hightower?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, Mr. Perdue, Mr. Steinbeck, do you have a preference? I could. Well, I have a number between 0 and 11. There's a number that I'm showing the commissioners I've already written. It's there. Mr. Purdue, choose a number between 0, the one closest to this number will go first. All right, sir? The number is 10, so you will go first, sir. And when you are ready, I will start the watch. And if you'd like me to give you a time, I can just do a 5, 10, and down to 1. Yes, sir.
I understand that I may take my mask off. I have been vaccinated and twice actually, give you an idea about my age.
It is your choice, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, my name's Frank Steinbach. I'm an attorney from Owensboro, Kentucky. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I represent a group of Hillview Addition residents who oppose the recommendations made by the Planning Commission in case number 2011 ZBG, where the applicants, as you've noted, are Mr. Potter and Betsy Harnett and Jeff Harnett. And I represent, as I noted, the opposition to the recommendations that have been made. First of all, I think that I can do the most of my work in talking with you tonight. If you will refer to page 14, that's page 14 of the report from the staff in this matter. Hillview Addition is a residential subdivision in south central Bowling Green. It's been in existence since 1946. Hillview contains 163 acres, within which are 127 lots, most of which are wooded. The average size of the lots is 1.2 acres each, and the density is 0.78 detached single-family residential acres per acre. We're here today to discuss whether this commission should accept or reject the zoning recommendations of the Planning Commission with respect to a 13.5 acre tract, which is a portion of Hillview Addition, this subdivision that lies in Hillview's southwest corner, just south of Highland Way. Of the 13.5 acres, Sam Potter Jr. owns 12.17 acres, and Betsy and Jeff Harnett own the remaining 1.33 acres. The Planning Commission recommended that a 7.58 acre portion of the Sam Potter property, and that, for your information, is the property that is outlined in red that fronts on Nashville Road. The Commission recommended that that property should be rezoned from RS1A to general business. The Commission also recommended that a 4.59 acre part of the Potter property should be rezoned from RS1A to RM3. The broad question, which you must consider tonight, is whether or not the Planning Commission correctly determined that the proposed development taken as a whole is compatible with the surrounding area. The answer is that the Commission did not determine correctly. And this Commission should reject the recommendation that's been made. Let's talk first about the 7.58 acres. That's on the western side of the Potter property. The 7.58 acres is designated on the flume as mixed-use residential. The 4.59 acres immediately east of it is designated as moderate-density residential. The Planning Commission determined that the Potter proposal, the 7.58 acres, complies with the mixed-use residential land use recommendations in the land use plan, and that the proposal concerning the 4.59 acres complies with moderate-density residential land use as outlined in the comprehensive plan. We disagree with that. We disagree because the proposal fails to comply with the recommendations of the mixed-use residential zone with respect to how much residential and how much commercial goes into a mixed-use residential parcel. The recommendations are clear in the comprehensive plan. 25% is to be commercial, 75% is to be residential. It helps to provide thus a use buffer between the western side of the street, which is highly commercial, and the eastern side of the street, which has been residential since 1946. The Planning Commission approved the plan without addressing that issue in any detail at all. And we have no idea from the adoption of the plan whether or not the 75% residential requirement or recommendation will be imposed. Turning now to the question of the moderate density residential. That's the property immediately to the east of the 7.58 acres that fronts on the highway. The commission voted that this property should be rezoned to to RM3, the RM3 zone. This decision was incorrect. It was incorrect because it failed to recognize that with respect to the moderate density area in this case, the recommendations concerning infill requirements control. Those requirements require that you must maintain or improve the existing character of the neighborhood, and single-family residential is what will maintain and improve the existing character of the neighborhood. Apartments won't. Mr. Potter, and this is okay in some locations, but Mr. Potter wants to build and he wants to rent. That will not preserve the character of this neighborhood. The property owned by the Hornets consists of 2 residential lots. The commission relied upon an exception to the requirements for amending the flume or the comprehensive plan to allow these 2 lots to be rezoned from RS1A to RM3. Yet, the 2 lots were in the low-density area of the city on the flume. RM3 is not an allowed use in a low-density area. There is an exception, however, which provides that if the property is 10 acres or less, then an adjoining parcel can be made a part of the project. We disagree with that result. We think that this project consists of more than 10 acres. And as a consequence, the exception does not apply. Further, if the exception applies, it becomes more than a recommendation. It becomes a requirement. The comprehensive plan is not designed to contain requirements. Finally, and most importantly, if the exception applies, due process is cut off. Why is due process cut off? Because if the exception applies, there is no discussion about whether or not the property should be rezoned. It simply is rezoned. No due process, no opportunity to be heard. The commission determined that the proposal made by the developer or the landowner concerning screening was okay. The proposal consisted of a 20-foot setback line, no build area, coupled with a partial cut zone of 10 feet located 10 feet from the boundary of each property. Within the cut zone, all trees would be left in place to the extent they were greater than 10 inches in diameter at a place 6 inches above the ground. The problem is that in that particular area, if you remove all trees that are smaller than that, you're going to clear cut it. And that means you're not going to fulfill the obligation to screen the property. The commission also determined that the proposal could comply with the housing and neighborhood requirements of the of the land use plan. However, the committee or the commission failed to rely upon those requirements contained in that section of the land use plan as a grounds for taking the action that they did. What do I mean by that? I mean that they did not determine whether or not this project would maintain or improve existing character and pattern of development within the area, in particular this subdivision. It means that they did not determine whether or not this proposal would strengthen nearby neighborhoods. They did not determine whether this proposal was suitable with respect to the housing type offered, and they did not determine whether or not the proposed residences will enhance the housing options in Bowling Green. Therefore, the Planning Commission incorrectly decided these issues in favor of Mr. Potter. Apartments do not improve or maintain Hillview Addition. It's single-family dwellings and has been since 1946. Apartments do not strengthen the neighborhood itself, because this neighborhood has people who have an investment in the property. People who rent, and it's fine to rent, but people who rent, people who are transient, do not have a stake in the neighborhood. So the commission made a mistake in allowing apartments to be built, especially in an infill project where more strict requirements are in place. Turning now to economic development, there's a section in the land use plan that requires that economic development be considered. The Planning Commission was determined to determine whether or not there was compliance with the economic development portion of the land use plan, or whether or not the general business portion of the 7.5 acres would help attract new business to the community, and if it will diversify the local economy. No determination was made by the commission concerning whether or not this proposal would advance economic interests in that area. Not all over Bowling Green, it's not what we're talking about, that area. Vicki Cole, one of the objecting residents, researched the status of existing business from Lutheran Church down to the Gilbert Graves Clinic on a north-south basis, and from Western Kentucky Research and Development Center over to the Goodwill Center on Campbell Lane. In that short distance, all of which is within 2 to 10 minutes from the site, she found 108 businesses. There is no need for additional economic development in that particular area. 108 businesses in that short section. If you look at the report or the motion that was made before the commission, you will see that the motion as written contains no findings of fact. Central to all resolutions of all problems in this type of administrative body, so that you can look at it and see what were the facts that were actually used for the basis of the decision, is that you set them out. And this commission did not set out the findings of fact upon which the commission based its decision-making process. Therefore, you are left with no basis for determining what facts were relied upon by the commission. Instead, what they relied upon was, quote, all documents and testimony presented at the hearing, and the compliance of the objectives and action items contained in the staff report. That could be anything. And the staff made clear in its report, look, commission, you have to decide some things here. Well, if the commission has to decide some things, it's got to have facts to support those decisions. Despite all this detail that I've gone through, however, you come back to this very basic question, and that is, does this proposal comply with the concept that in an infill project there has to be compatibility? Here, that compatibility is not present. I see the 1-minute sign. I can say that I have finished my presentation. I appreciate your time. I will take any questions.
Hold on questions, Mr. Steinbach, until
Yes.
Mr. Perdue is an opportunity, but thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
If you're ready, let me know, and we'll begin your clock as well.
Feel free to start the clock at any time, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the commission. Let me first say it is absolutely a pleasure to be here before you in person. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. More importantly, my clients, Judge Sam Potter, and Jeffrey and Betsy Harned. Mr. Harned's here, along with Judge Potter. We very much appreciate the opportunity to be here before you. Mr. Steinbach mentioned this, but I wanted to clarify it for you. This rezoning recommendation applies to 13.5 acres. Judge Potter is the owner of approximately 12.1 of those 13.5 acres. Mr. Harned and his wife own about 1.4 acres, roughly. Hopefully, you have had a chance to review the record, the packet of information that was provided to you from the hearings that were held before the Planning Commission. Those were on March 4 and March 18. As you can see, if you had a chance to review the minutes from those meetings, the Planning Commission heard, I think it was over 5 hours of testimony and evidence regarding Judge Potter's application and proposed development. As always, the Planning Commission was very thorough. Again, you can see from the minutes the level of engagement that the Planning Commissioners had as it pertained not only to the evidence that we submitted on behalf of the applicant, but also the evidence and the testimony from the number of folks who spoke in opposition, in addition to Mr. Steinbach. I will say, and I think it is evident again from the record, that the hearings that were held before the Planning Commission were conducted fairly and objectively. No one who wished to speak on the rezoning application before the Commission was denied an opportunity to speak. Even the parties who were represented by counsel, by Mr. Steinbach, each had an opportunity to speak in addition to the comments and the evidence introduced by their counsel. No one who wished to introduce evidence before the Commission was denied an opportunity to introduce whatever evidence they wished for the Planning Commission to consider. And when the hearings were over, when hours of testimony and evidence stretched over 2 weeks were submitted, the Commissioners voted to recommend your approval, and their vote was nearly unanimous. I believe there was one vote in opposition. The rest of the votes were in favor of recommending approval by this body. So, out of respect for your time and you this evening, I don't want to go back through every detail. I don't have the time to go back through every detail. That's why I hope you've had an opportunity to carefully review the record. Instead, I simply want to convey a few points that I know Judge Potter would want me to impress upon you. By this time, as a body, you've probably sat through enough of these hearings to understand the lens through which the Planning Commission and you as the ultimate reviewing body have to view these types of rezoning applications. The first question, or first hurdle through which you have to look at these applications is it compatible, or does it meet or comply with the future land use map? The answer in this instance is a resounding yes. Objections were made before the Planning Commission. Mr. Steinbach spoke to this exception. This exception applies to this application because the area that was proposed to be rezoned to RM3 was less than 10 acres. 78% of that area sat in the moderate density residential future land use category. It is without question, falling within that exception, Rachel Hurt, who presented the report on behalf of the Planning Commission staff, testified before the Commission, and a summary of her testimonies in the minutes, as to why no amendment of the future land use map was necessary and why this proposal clearly complied with the future land use map. The second question of the second hurdle, does it generally comply with the comprehensive plan? You all have probably heard this before. I will quote the Kentucky Court of Appeals. The comprehensive plan is intended to be a guide for development. It's not a straitjacket. The Planning Commission is not bound to follow every detail of the comprehensive plan. In this case, the Planning Commission nearly unanimously made the decision that this application was generally in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Through the hours of testimony at the Planning Commission and even this evening, you've heard the opposition to this application focus on a select few portions of the comprehensive plan that they took issue with, that they didn't believe this application complied with. But in voting to approve Judge Potter's rezoning application, I counted at least 24 different provisions or sections of the comprehensive plan with which the Planning Commission determined this rezoning to be in compliance with. Again, almost unanimously. There were discussions also at the Planning Commission hearings, and again this evening, about compatibility. When something like this comes before the Planning Commission, the question is, does it generally comply with the comprehensive plan? Compatibility, and much of that issue is achieved through imposition of various conditions. It used to be called binding elements. They're now called development plan conditions. When this application was made, Judge Potter submitted at least 20 different restrictions that he proposed to be placed on this development in order to do what he felt was create a development that was responsible, that was compatible. As the evidence developed before the Planning Commission, hour after hour, it became apparent that there were some questions or concerns from neighbors, even from some of the planning commissioners. From that, Judge Potter went back, revised a number of the development plan conditions, included a number of additional development plan conditions. For example, the landscape buffer between the proposed RM3 portion and the residential portion along Highland Way is twice as large as that which is required by the Warren County zoning ordinance. Judge Potter agreed to create what is called a tree preservation zone. That is a 10-foot area all along the boundary line between the RM3 portion and the residential portions on Highland Way, in which all trees measured 10 inches in diameter, 6 inches from the ground, would not be disturbed. I submit to you that there are a number of trees within that area that will be preserved. I disagree with Mr. Steinbach on a number of things, and that's one of them. Added into the record at the hearing was a condition that Judge Potter would construct an 8-foot-tall solid wooden fence, again, as an additional means of buffering between the RM3 portion and the residential properties on Highland Way, again, to protect the privacy of those individuals, none of which is required by the zoning ordinance, all of which Judge Potter was happily willing to agree to again, enhance the compatibility of his proposed development. Judge Potter also agreed, as a condition, to reduce the maximum height of any buildings within the development, going from 3 stories to a maximum of 2 in the general business section, which runs along Nashville Road, and agreeing that any buildings in the RM3 portion that are 40 feet or less from the residential properties on Highland Way would only be 1 story tall instead of 2. Judge Potter agreed to impose hours of operations on the properties and the uses in the general business section. The hours of operation that he has agreed to impose are consistent, if not the very same, as the highway business and general business uses directly across the street. You'll note that there is a service station, a used car lot, a nursery and landscape business, a restaurant. Judge Potter also agreed to prohibit certain uses. You'll see those in the zoning ordinance. He agreed to prohibit certain uses at the time of application and agreed to expand the list of prohibited uses during the course of the 2 hearings. And further, Judge Potter agreed to reduce the density of any residential uses in the general business portion because of a specific question or concern raised by one of the commissioners. In addition to the development plan conditions, again, which go to this issue of compatibility, I would point you to the minutes and the portion of the minutes which summarize the testimony from the Planning Commission staff member, Rachel Hurt. A couple of examples. She spoke to the multitude of similar zoning classifications and uses in close proximity to Judge Potter's property. I mentioned a few of them: service station, gas station, convenience store, used car lot, restaurant. There is RM4 zoned property directly across the street at Emmett Place. The Potter Children's Home property is zoned RM4, all of which are more intensive uses than what is being proposed by Judge Potter on this 13.5 acres. I submit to you that the evidence about the 108 businesses within 2 to 10 minutes of this property is evidence of its compatibility, not evidence that no more businesses are needed or warranted in this area. The multifamily property across the street, the RM4 Emmett Place Apartments property, is considerably more dense than what Judge Potter has agreed to limit the RM3 portion of this development to. Judge Potter has taken pride in developing a plan, a development plan that is responsible, that fits. This is property that has been in his family since the 1960s. He's proud of it, and he very much intends it to be developed in such a way that it adds attractive businesses and more diverse housing options that don't exist in this area of Bowling Green. And it seems to me, after spending hours with the Planning Commission over the course of 2 weeks, that they clearly agreed that it does these things. And I respectfully, on behalf of my clients, ask for your vote of approval as well, based on the record, the evidence, and the testimony that was heard by the Planning Commission. To bring this to a close, I want to again thank each and every one of you for your time and consideration, not only as it pertains to this matter, but for your service to our community. Like Mr. Steinbach, I'll be happy to address any questions that any of you may have.
All right, Mr. Perdue, thank you. Both have had the opportunity to present. At this time, it's open for discussion from the commissioners.
Mr. Perdue, let me ask you this. Are you guys willing, I guess, to locate, I guess, if there's going to be any type of gas station? I think it was mentioned by one of the individuals that testified before at maybe the March 4th or the last hearing at the Planning and Zoning, basically to put it on Nashville, because I do believe someone may have mentioned that they could see where basically bringing, business from Nashville Road, all the way to kind of connect them. Are you guys willing to basically make sure that if a gas station or fast food restaurant will stay on the front of Nashville Road, and I believe not meet actually Highland Road?
So the way the development is proposed, any commercial use, and that would include, in general business, could include a restaurant or a gas station. It must sit on Nashville Road, and there is a development plan condition that says it must actually face Nashville Road.
Well, I guess my question would be this: would you guys be in agreement to basically make sure if it is some type of fast food or some type of gas station, that it's not going to be closer to the residential end of Highland Way, even if it's going to be on Nashville Road? Because there is one street that it could meet, basically have a gas station or a fast food restaurant and not necessarily be closer to the residential side. Would you guys be in agreement to that?
I believe that that proposal, that question was asked before the Planning Commission, and my clients were not able or willing to agree to it at that time. And if I understand your question, you're asking about that location at the corner of Nashville Road,
Yes.
and Highland Way. Unless their positions on that have changed, I don't believe that we believe that that the additional conditions with which we have been willing to agree are enough, so to speak, and that we're not willing to agree to limit any further beyond what we've already agreed to limit the various uses that may be along Nashville Road, regardless of location of where they are along Nashville Road. So I guess the answer to the question, unless I get told otherwise, is respectfully, Commissioner Bailey, is no, we can't.
This is the road that's going to be cut by the state. It's not the existing Highland Way corner.
That's correct. So, and that's a very good question, Commissioner Perigin. The development plan, the concept plan that we call it, you have a copy of that in your packet of materials. The concept plan is based on the reconfiguration of what is now Highland Way to create a four-way traffic light intersection with what is the street across with Emmett, of course. The existing Highland Way intersection at Nashville Road will remain. However, it would be converted into a right-in, right-out only. For anybody that travels through there, they understand where the danger lies. We had a traffic engineer testify about that before the Planning Commission, and that is that attempted left-hand turn, really at any hour of the day from Highland on the Nashville Road, only potentially to be made worse by the fact that they're getting ready to widen Nashville Road from what's 3 lanes now to 5. So it would eliminate that left turn from Highland without a traffic signal and create a 4-way stop with the traffic signal, and would create a right-in, right-out only on what is now the existing Highland Way, Nashville Road.
And Mr. Perdue, this is my last question. When I looked at the maps and kind of went over the video, and I saw that there were 3 sinkholes around that area. One of those sinkholes is actually going to be on that new road, and I think there was a sinkhole that was on one of the property of one of the neighbors, Mr. Potter's, or Judge Potter's, and I believe there may have been a sinkhole that was on his property as well. The picture that I initially saw didn't have, like, I guess, the trees were not, in bloom. Then we saw the other trees that were in bloom. Do we know, I guess, by uprooting those trees, how would it affect those sinkholes? And this may not be a question for you. I know that you've answered in the past, or maybe Rachel answered that it was an engineering question. But do we know how that would affect, I guess, the possible sinkholes, and how it could possibly affect also the neighboring residents' property that has a sinkhole?
Not to hunt on your question, Commissioner Bailey, because it is a good question. But I think that is an engineering issue, and as Mr. Peterson spoke earlier to you on another zoning matter with a question about sinkholes, that is an issue that has to be addressed, but it is addressed at the development plan, the final development plan portion, where the engineers will come in and take a look at that. And again, that the developer cannot create a situation where more water or runoff is being driven onto surrounding property owners than does not already exist. That the development has to be engineered in such a way that does not create a scenario like that. And we included a development plan condition that specifically requires us to work with the Department of Public Works as it pertains to any sinkholes on the property. So assuming the development is approved and development actually moves forward, the engineers would then get involved in terms of placing things in the development and addressing sinkholes as they exist, because there are a couple of sinkholes in the vicinity. And I know there's at least one on Judge Potter's property, if not more. And we're aware of those. And again, those have to be addressed, and those will be addressed by people who are qualified to address them. And I don't think I'm in any position to sit here and tell you how that can happen. I'd have to have my engineer here. And of course, let me add this, as it relates to the road realignment and how that might line up with any sinkholes that are on the property, again, the state and the city as well are going to be involved when it comes to redesigning how exactly that redesign of Highland Way will occur and how to be engineered such as to avoid sinkholes.
Sure. Does anybody else need to go? I'm a little bit confused, Mr. Pardue, about your response to Commissioner Perrigin's question, because Commissioner Bailey was asking about the existing Highland Way and that corner of the existing Highland Way and Nashville Road. And I understood Commissioner Perrigin's question to be, but you're not developing that corner, you're developing on the new corner. So are you or are you not developing general business on the existing corner of Highland Way?
We are, Commissioner Beasley Brown, and if
Okay,
I
'cause that's-
wasn't,
yeah,
if I wasn't clear about that, then it wasn't intentional. I think probably the best way to conceptualize it is to look at the concept plan, which shows existing Highland Way extending to Nashville Road, as well as the proposed realignment. And in essence, I don't know, if you look at it really closely, there's a red line that's drawn where you can see the general business and RM3 portions are separated. And the red line basically runs parallel to Nashville Road from Highland Way to the Potter Children's Home property. So it is all of the property along Nashville Road that the Planning Commission has recommended be approved for general business. So development of commercial uses pursuant to the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval could, and in all likelihood will occur all along Nashville Road. Again, with the understanding that there is a condition that says any of those commercial uses have to face Nashville Road.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's what I thought, looking at the design. I thought you were saying that, no, it would only be on that new corner. So this general business area in this corner on existing Highland Way, where it's currently all single family, that could be a fast food restaurant that's open till midnight. It could be a brewery open till midnight, restaurant type of thing. It could be a gas station open till midnight on that existing Highland Way corner. And you have here an entryway to it as well from Highland.
That's correct, and
Okay.
the only thing I'll point out there is that there are businesses almost immediately across the street.
And you think that across the street is connected to things across the street from it?
Do.
I agree. I think that across the street does impact the land that's across from it. And so first I want to say that I'm really grateful for all the development plan conditions that have been put in place to try to make sure that there's adequate buffering between this development and the current neighborhood. And I always approach these hearings, wanting to see us shooting for win-win, like we're trying to teach our kids to pursue win-win for both sides, and that's always my goal. I want both sides to walk away feeling like we are making Bowling Green a better place for all of us. So that's my goal tonight, is that you feel, like walk away feeling that as well. And there's just 2 points where I feel like we haven't quite reached that yet. And so this portion of this general business that is on the existing Highland Way is a part that I feel like we're close, but not quite there, because there are single-family residences across the street. And I know that if I lived across the street and there were businesses allowed, until midnight, that would not feel peaceful and restful anymore like it did when it was an orchard across the street. And We normally, right, we use the buffering in between incompatible zones to help these incompatible zones to be able to coexist and to buffer so that we do have neighborhoods that are near commercial and businesses be able to still have a restful, peaceful place to go to, for kids to be able to have a safe place to play. And so I would also ask, would you all be willing to either A, remove that opening onto the existing Highland Way and just put a landscape buffer with some trees there, and then, you know, use your same hours of operation and the businesses that you've chosen there for the rest of it? Or B, what Commissioner Bailey had proposed, would you be willing to have more restrictive qualifications just for the very first business that is developed there on the corner, so that it's more business hours, 8 to 8 or 7 to 9, something like that, more business hours, so that when people come home from work, they can feel like it's still peaceful and there's not busyness there. And for more business type uses like a bank or things that would be more, so that when folks came home, when kids came home, people came home from work, that busyness there on that corner would also be, restful as well. So would you all be willing to consider, and I understand why you don't want to limit the entire general business not being able to have a gas station or a restaurant, but is there a way to just this corner that is currently zoned single family to think about either removing the entry and adding a buffer there, or just having that, whoever develops it, that whoever's got that first piece needs to be, just that one building needs to be more of a business professional
I understand.
I wouldn't be against closing the entrance off of Highland myself. I mean, I think that you're, that just having one entrance is maybe better.
I'm not,
Unless,
I don't think that is a huge
Right.
impediment.
I mean,
the entrance.
it encouraged less traffic coming
Right.
down Highland to enter into the shopping in that area, and I think that would be a good improvement. Thank you, Dana.
So, thank you for the question. I guess in order to answer the question, I'm going to have to speak with
Sure.
my clients, and if that's okay with the board, if you'll just give me a few minutes to speak with them, I'll jump right back up here and let you know.
Let's take a 5-minute recess, allow ourselves to use the restroom, facilities.
Before we do that, Mayor, Commissioner Beasley
absolutely.
Brown indicated two. Do you want to address the other one so that if he needs to speak to his clients about both of those issues? Were there two things, or
The
does
two
this-
alternatives, which, when you mentioned two.
Yeah, A and B.
Okay.
And I understand
Just these
exactly what she's
For
saying.
buffers or hours, correct?
The removing the entry and a landscape buffer, and then not changing, everything can be the same, what you just described, or just that first business would be, more of a business professional, office hours type of.
Maybe we make it part of the greenways. Greenways only.
So that's my language that the one I gave you would be the language
I
to
understand
consider. Yeah.
exactly what you're asking, so give me a few minutes, and
Okay.
thank you for
So
that.
let's reconvene at 6:18. Thank you. I'd like to have a comment before you begin.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of clarify what I was talking about as far as the greenways go. If we could keep the old road, enough of the old road, the existing road, I guess I would say, I won't call it old, like 8 feet of it to dedicate to connecting to the greenways. That would prevent ever having an entrance from Highland Way into this development.
Understood. I will say, as it pertains to greenways, again, and this is another development plan condition, is that Judge Potter did agree to dedicate an area along the southern boundary line with the Potter Children's Home for future construction of a greenway that ultimately, hopefully, according to the Master Greenways Plan, will eventually connect Nashville Road, a greenway from Nashville Road all the way to Bowling Green Junior High School.
Right.
But thank you for that clarification, and I think.
Well, it
after-
could take them right down to Small House Road and, you know,
Right.
easily, and protect the residents over there just a little bit more.
So, and I think after discussing it with Judge Potter and Mr. Harnett, I think their answer may satisfy the question. And they are willing to agree to eliminate that entrance or that access point on the north side of the development to the old Highland Way or the existing Highland Way, and will agree to construct a 10-foot landscape buffer from the point at which Highland Way meets Nashville Road all the way back to where the realignment will tie into the existing Highland Way. I think they certainly understand where you all are coming from and where your concern lies there, and I did not get much hesitation from them when I asked them if that's something that was acceptable. So what we will do is we will make yet another revision to the development plan conditions, and I'll have to see where that lines up to see whether or not we have to revise both sets or just one set, but we'll accomplish that and get those filed.
Great.
So Mrs. Jackson, our clerk, I've consulted with her. We do not have to make an amendment to this. It would be a vote with a note that your client has agreed to those conditions.
It's in the record that we've agreed, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pardue and the judge, Mr. Harnett. I really appreciate you all helping us, like I said, reach win-win and for the neighborhood to be able to have that beautiful neighborhood that we really do, right? We don't have very many neighborhoods like it, and especially the big trees that the neighbors are being able to enjoy and use in terms of, right, their energy costs are down, that we've kept all these big trees all this time. I'm grateful for the buffering that you all have agreed to buffer the RM3 to the single family. I think that what you all have proposed is definitely going to improve the existing buffering between, I'm not sure the owners of the properties, but if I'm looking at the aerial on page 10, and it's I guess the northeast boundary that would bump up against the first single family outside of the proposed development. When I walked over there, it was clear that that was just, there weren't really a lot of trees there, just kind of some brush. And so I think that fence there and the landscape buffer is really going to improve and enhance that area. Same thing with that next, if you continue following that line towards the east, so the back parts of the next two, or those first two single-family homes, where the south part of their border hits the Potter property. First of all, when I walked over at this property, Judge Potter, and it just took my breath away at how beautiful it was. And I can't thank you as a mom enough for I can't think of all the incredible benefit that property has done with the huge trees to just, as a sponge, clean the air for all of Bowling Green. So as a citizen, just thank you for what this property has done as this natural resource that we've had. And so I was walking back there, trying to see, okay, what's the existing buffer? Is what we already have here, right? Because it's just natural buffering between those now because there's so many trees. And I feel like that first one, right, they've got a lot of trees and buffering in their own backyard. So I feel like what we have is totally adequate. When I walked to the south of the property, I think it might be the Heller property that has the pool there, it looked like maybe the trees had been cleared already, maybe to put in a fence within that 10-foot, not on your side. I just mean that it looked like, 50 years ago, whenever they put a fence in, maybe if there had been trees within that first 10-foot barrier, that there just wasn't a lot of the really mature trees that you see of the rest of the property within that first 10 feet. and even maybe in that 20 feet. And so my only concern really is that back northeast corner of the Potter property. And so maybe before I get to you, Mr. Pardue, Mr. Peterson, I wanted to ask you about the zoning, our zoning ordinance, and just what is the basic requirements that are there already for landscape screening in our zoning ordinance? Like what is just everybody has to do when there's two incompatible use next to each other?
Sure, I don't have the exact requirement in front of me, but there's a certain number of evergreens and deciduous trees you have to plant per linear feet along those common property lines as a buffer, and it's a 10-foot buffer, 10 feet buffer to put those in, but you can substitute a fence for the evergreen requirement, and then there's another option with shrubs.
And that's, you said it's in the first 10 feet, and then you plant new trees?
Well, it's within that 10 feet.
Within that 10 feet?
Property line 10 feet in, yes.
And you have one row of trees and then another row of trees?
They are spaced, typically they're done in 2 rows because it's quite a stringent tree requirement. So typically it's done in 2 rows or staggering trees, but I don't guess there's a direct requirement. It has to be 2 rows of trees, but.
That's how you fit them all in?
It'd be like what you see at,
Yours
at
is, yeah, yours
behind
is
my
20.
house on Highland, where the church is. There's a row of evergreens, and then there's a row of shrubs, and it's really nice.
So I just wanted to clarify, just for this part that's right near that pool, that's right on that property line, Mr. Pardue, are you all keeping the existing vegetation? I kind of drew, and maybe I can hand this to you. Yes, please do. I kind of drew this just one little section that, to me, without spending any money on new trees, anything at all, that one little corner, if you just left as is, just so when I walked over there, it looked like if you just left that one corner as is, it just naturally will buffer those single families from the 2-story possible apartment buildings that might be within 40 feet of that property. Because when I think about a 2-story apartment building, possibly 40 feet away, if there isn't that, mature vegetation there, you'll definitely, I think, lose that privacy that they now have. And if there's a way to preserve it, to me, this is win-win. We don't have to spend any money and keep that really good, that we know will hold that privacy there, where if we kind of take it down or remove it, that it then may need to be, put in some more trees that will help create that privacy again.
I wouldn't be against that either, as long as the road that the state is going to come through, because we're really getting a good deal there to get $100,000 into a road that's going to stop and put a light up there at Highland and create some safety.
I think that's a pretty good distance from the road. I don't think that's going to, we're going to run into issues there. So, like you, Commissioner Beasley Brown, I've been out to the property a couple times, and I've been back in that corner. And the first person I met when I went back into the property was a coyote.
Oh yeah, I was clapping. Let me tell you, I was stomping.
Yeah. So, and you probably, sounds like you had the same experience I did. When you stand in the middle of that property in the back, it is so densely wooded around the perimeter that you have no idea you're standing in the middle of town. And the idea of, again, creating a landscape buffer that's twice what is required by the zoning ordinance, then going the extra step of creating a 10-foot area in which we're going to preserve, large trees of, I guess it's 10 inches or more in diameter, 6 inches from the ground or whatever it is in keeping with the fact that it is a beautiful piece of property, and it will enhance the the diverse housing options that will be developed by having that feeling that, you know, you're in the middle of town, but you really don't feel like it. That's the whole idea with the additional steps that Judge Potter was willing to agree to create and preserve that buffer. Judge Potter's obviously more familiar with that corner than I am. There is a good portion of that that isn't trees, it's brush and grown-up shrubbery and things of that nature, which wouldn't, for practical purposes, make sense to preserve. But certainly, any large trees in that corner, again, I think the intent from the beginning is, you know, those enhance this development. Cutting all those trees down doesn't do anything to help attract, again, folks who may want some diverse housing that might otherwise not be, you know, able to have it in this particular part of town. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that we agree. Anybody who's out there will agree that you want to preserve it. I just want to make sure, right, because I know that this is a concept plan, right? And there may be a different owner when the final plan is created, and they may not have the same values that Judge Potter and I have about preserving these trees, and they may just want to, you know, go right up to that 40-foot and right up to that 20-foot, and then, because those bigger trees there are right beyond that, right? And so if there is a way just to so like I said, the first single-family property, no problem, that buffer makes sense to me, but in that corner, is there a way to describe that corner just to make sure that vegetation stays?
Doesn't the trees stay, didn't you say in the binding elements, or whatever they're called, development plan documents, that the larger trees have to stay?
Those that are with
Mature
anywhere
trees.
from 10 feet, from the property
Right.
line, 10 feet.
Right. Right.
And again, if
It's
Commissioner
not in the
Beasley
binding
Brown has been
elements?
back in that corner.
The trees are too small in that area.
So without going out there and putting flags around the trees that are within the 10 feet, I mean, I can't, it's difficult, it would be even difficult for Judge Potter to stand here and tell you what would be, what is
Yeah. Well, what
brush
if-
that needs to be removed and what's not.
Well,
And I guess,
would it be possible to, you know, be able to have, I don't know, maybe an engineer, just describe that border there, that natural buffer, and within, say, the 40 feet that you will, is it the 40 feet no built? No, it's 20 feet. I'm trying to remember. Sorry, so many numbers. Will you remind me?
20 feet, no development, 10 feet,
Oh, and then
tree
it's
preservation.
the 40 feet before a more than one story.
That's correct.
Yes. And I think that if it's a one-story, what you proposed is fine. I'm only concerned if it's a two-story, that this vegetation remains. That's my only concern. So if there was wording that was, if it's a two-story building, that this vegetation would remain in this one corner as is.
I appreciate the question, and I just think it's difficult to, sitting here to determine, again, what is a tree, especially based on that aerial, what is a tree and what is otherwise overgrown brush that for practical purposes needs to be removed. So what we have attempted to do, with the understanding, and you brought up the point, if it's a different developer, a different owner, what we attempted to do with the preservation zone and the 20 feet, knowing, again, we're preserving trees in 10 feet, but we still have to abide by the things that Mr. Peterson described in terms of landscaping, not just for 10 feet, but for 20 feet. And on top of that, build an 8-foot solid wooden fence. We felt like that is about as much as we could do to, from a practical standpoint, create, preserve the existing buffer that's there. Because again, some of that is, and
I talked to Mr. Peterson about that, and that's why I feel like this is win-win. Because he said, yes, we prefer that existing vegetation stays rather than pulling out and planting new. So I feel like you don't have to, the the whole point is that in this area, you would not have to worry about having to do all what we just talked about in that buffering, because they prefer the natural vegetation to stay instead. Does that make sense? So in this area, you wouldn't have to do all those new plantings and bufferings and all that.
I don't know how much of it is, I mean, some of it isn't trees. I mean,
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is, I've seen in development plan conditions before, that because it creates this natural privacy barrier, that the neighborhood gets into the development plan conditions, that we want all of it to stay. You don't have to touch a thing. You don't have to brush. No one's going to ask him to move anything. You just totally leave it wild, and that everyone wants it wild.
And Mr. Perdue, I concur, I guess, with Commissioner Beasley Brown. I'm not sure if you guys, I know you were talking a long time, and as attorneys, sometimes we can talk a long time without saying yes or no. But if it was one story, I could see where the privacy is still there for the neighboring resident. But if it's 2 stories without that protection, I can see where there's the potential of the privacy could be violated, especially with that pool that's in that neighborhood. So if they came out there in a swimming suit or whatever, someone could be peeking over the barrier and seeing what's going on. I'm not sure if you guys would agree to that, to either one story or for just preserving.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, Commissioner Bailey, but here's what it's better said this way. Maybe this is what you're trying to say, and I just can't get it through my mind. For purposes of the development property along the property line with the Heller property, what if the condition was that all existing vegetation within the 20 feet buffer shall remain?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a 20-foot buffer and a 10-foot zone where we're going to only cut certain trees, just for that area that borders that Heller property, and that's the one with the swimming pool, I believe, we added a condition that said for that portion, there should be no removal of no existing vegetation in that 20-foot no development zone. So everything that's out there now that's within that 20 feet remains, just as it pertains to that property boundary. That is probably something that I think is accomplishable.
So again, right now we're getting to the tape measure. To me, the easiest thing to do with the information we have in front of us was sort of the visual. So, Judge Potter, do you know if kind of those trees we see there, that's within that 20 foot?
There's a big ash tree right back in the corner, right where we're talking about, where it's nice.
Probably agree to keep the big ash tree. I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's within the 20 feet or not.
Okay.
We'll agree to retain the ash tree.
It's either ash or elm.
Okay.
Whatever it is, yeah. I mean, because if it's 22 feet or 25 feet, then I think.
There's these two, I see these kind of 2 things here in these 2 corners. It looks like there might be, yes, please, these 2 here. Is it what he's talking about? Yes. Those 2? Yeah, please do. Yeah. Oh, maybe it splits. Maybe it's a big, is it a big one that maybe has 2?
And I think it's right within 20 feet anyway.
Mm-hmm. But if it isn't, you'd agree to that tree stays. Yeah, you don't care. Okay.
So 20 feet
All
existing,
vegetation. Mm-hmm.
on the portion of property that borders the Heller property.
And the elm tree.
In addition to the elm and/or ash tree, whatever it is, provided that it's not within 20 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that added, does that?
Doesn't that even include like that whole down to where the Bryant's property is, the house property is, because I mean, maybe the Bryant's put a plot in their back.
All right. Oh, hold on. We're getting public comments, and we've agreed to keep this to our attorneys. So I'll ask that the attorneys consult. And do you have something to add, Ms. Hill?
I do.
Commissioner.
I'm sorry, but based on their questions, now I'm confused on something that I wrote down, and I believe it was from your comments.
Ma'am.
I thought you stated that Mr. Potter had already gone above and beyond by reducing the height of his buildings. Instead of 3 floors, he's gone to 2 for
It's
the
on-
business.
Ma'am.
And then for apartments, he's agreed to 1 floor?
1 floor for any residential structure that is 40 feet or closer to the, anything that's beyond 40 feet can be a maximum of 2.
Okay, that's what.
And that's a house or, that's a single-family residence or an apartment or a condominium or a patio home, all of which would be permitted in that area.
That's what I thought, but that kind of confused. Thank you.
Sorry if I confused you.
No, you did not.
Okay.
Their questions were, wanted to make sure I'd written it down correctly. Thank you.
My guess is right now, there's a lot of folks over there that are exploring and looting, and is that the case here? And that they're kind of used to going back there and used to hanging around and?
I think Judge Potter gets a call from the police department on a regular basis.
Right, right, and so, you know, you don't want to track that ongoing even after there is development. Honestly, I wouldn't, but, you know, and underbrush and overgrowth and all those things tend to attract those kinds of activities.
Mr. Stainback, would you like to come back?
Step to the, public can hear him.
Mr.
Can you step?
Mr. Stainback, would you please come back up?
Back and forth between the commission members and counsel for Mr. Potter. I would add with respect to the 20-foot natural buffer that now is proposed to the south of the Heller property. I would add to that that logically one would extend that all the way to the corner, that is to the Bryant corner, so that the 20-foot natural vegetation buffer would run from the Heller east corner to the Bryant west corner, so as to protect her property as well as the Heller property. Now, I recognize that the Bryant property has some trees in the backyard, but I would think that logically speaking, an extension across both those boundaries to better protect both of those properties visually would be in order, at least for discussion.
Is the Bryant, if I'm looking at the overhead, the aerial, it's to the left of the Heller property? Yeah, if you would approach and show me on this map, that would be great.
On this map, how we doing? Here we go. The Bryant property is in this area, right here. This is Bryant, that's lot 11. This property is the,
I think we need to put these two together when we're looking at
this
that.
property is the property.
This is Heller here. This is Heller.
This is Heller, yes ma'am. This is Bryant. And
Okay.
what I'm talking about is having this 20-foot natural vegetation all the way to this corner, so from here to there. And then in fact, if possible, down through here, but in particular, from the Heller's southeast corner out 20 feet to the Bryant southwest corner out 20 feet, in order to get the privacy buffer to which you're talking about.
Yes, so I understand why you would want that, but as I told Mr. Pardue and Judge Potter, I'm seeking win-win. That means all of us kind of have to compromise and not get exactly what we want. So I understand it'd be great if we can do it all the way across all the residential borders. But did you say it was Miss Bryant? So, you know, they've got that natural vegetation there. And so, and there's not that vegetation they have on the Potter property is not as thick and dense as it is in the back corner. So I feel like, and they've got that pool back there, right? And I definitely understand. That's why I kind of drew this kind of half circle there on that corner, because what's the property that's to the right of the Hellers? So the Lloyds, right, they kind of have some open space there that if we don't retain that kind of corner, they lose some privacy as well. So I felt like if we're going to prioritize one place where we would ask them to create a bigger buffer, I feel like this is going to help the folks who would be most impacted and lose the privacy if this natural buffer was there. So I know it's not perfect, but I feel like it's important if we're going to ask them to concede some things that everybody does.
So can I state the additional condition on the record, because there is one thing I need to add to it to make sure it meets your approval. So the additional condition will be that for purposes of the Potter property that is adjacent to the Heller property, that all existing vegetation within the 20-foot no development area shall remain, except that which is necessary to construct the 8-foot tall solid wooden fence that we agreed to construct as a condition before the commission. So there may, do you understand where I'm coming from, that there may be portions of that brush that simply has to be cleared because, again, there was this push at the commission level for a fence, which we agreed to commit to. On top of that, and to the extent it is not within that 20 feet, we will allow the ash and/or elm tree in that corner to remain. So that's essentially what the condition will say.
So my only, I guess, question, because I'm just trying to imagine all scenarios in my mind of an unintended consequence of that wording. So if within 20 feet, what remains is no longer that lush vegetation we see, and at that point, well, maybe this is a question for Mr. Peterson, would they then be required to have the normal landscaping buffer? Does that make sense, Mr. Peterson?
If I'm following this correctly, what would likely be happen is we would consider the brush that was left as well as the trees in addition to the fence and see if there would be any gaps left. They would be credited that existing landscaping. So I think what was stated would essentially replace what's in the zoning ordinance in that case, because it would be more restrictive than what's in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, so then if it didn't meet the minimum of what they have already agreed to kind of in the development plan conditions, they could use that as credit and then only have to buy some trees to fill in what had to be removed.
That's correct.
Okay. So either way, there's going to be that screening buffering. Okay. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all being willing to seek win-win. I really appreciate it.
And I echo that. I appreciate you guys willing to compromise as much as we can. And like Commissioner Beasley Brown said, I want both sides to win. You know, I want to make sure that both sides are not just winning. I'm a county boy, so I went to Warren Central. But one of the things that I know is like some of the county is encroaching on the city. So having like housing there, hopefully, we can have new students that's going to be going to city schools. So I appreciate the judge, you know, willing to make some compromises here, and appreciate all sides just trying to get a win-win. And I know there's going to be some losses, but hopefully this is the best solution that we can get, a win-win for all sides.
Sir, thank you.
All right, no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Perigin.
Yes.
Bailey?
Yes.
Beasley Brown?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Alcott?
Yes. Thank you both. We will have a second reading at the next meeting. We have time for public comments, and we have a few people on the agenda. I'd like to call Miss Laura Harper Knight to the podium. Good evening, Mrs. Knight. I'll ask that you restate your name for record. Also state your
Address?
your address. Yes, thank you very much.
Sure thing, absolutely.
And then last, would you keep it within 3 to 5?
I absolutely will. I'll be brief. I appreciate you hearing
You
public
can
comments.
take off your mask if you choose.
Can you hear me all
to do
right
so.
with it on?
We will. We'll
Okay,
try.
great.
We'll try.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I know it's been a long meeting and so much to discuss and think about tonight. I wanted to begin my comment tonight by just recognizing that today is a historic day. Just a few hours ago, we heard the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial and saw the wheels of justice, and were left to wonder why they only begin to turn after a tragedy. So my heart is with everyone continuing to grieve the murder of George Floyd tonight. But that's not what I wanted to speak to about tonight per se. I wanted to talk with you about another topic that's been on my heart this week. I was one of the 67 Bowling Green residents that sent you emails last week, and I want to thank those of you that responded to that email. Really appreciate opening the conversation. It's really important. And, you know, I hope that it's exciting and inspiring to you all to know that so many Bowling Green residents are ready to be in conversation and come together to find solutions to the housing issue in Bowling Green. And I wanted to note, too, I want to encourage you all to think of your constituents not just as the people that you're accountable to, not just as the people that you are here to represent, but also as a tremendous resource to you. The people of Bowling Green want to work together to find solutions with you. And so I just want to say, you know, we know these issues well. We live them every single day. And we can be, and we should be, a part of the conversation to craft solutions that work for everyone. So I'm here, just wanted to follow up, and I'll close by asking one more time, will you all commit to having and hosting a work session where you sit down with your constituents, community leaders, all relevant parties to discuss policy solutions to housing issues in Bowling Green?
It is open up for comments if commissioners choose to do so. However, your comments are taken and noted, and I did receive many of the emails, and I haven't been able to give, most of them were chain email, but I did receive yours specifically. But I have not been able to comment back, but there is work going on that I would like you to know. They're working.
I'm in on that.
And so, but we do acknowledge your comments, and we appreciate your comments.
So just to clarify, I know that you've all received many of the same email. Those are all each from an individual person that sent that email. We had a pre-written email that folks could opt into, just to make it a little bit easier for folks to reach out. But I think regardless, it shows that an overwhelming number of people agree with the message that we were trying to send. That's still 67 people that agree with that message and chose to send that email to you.
And each of them are important, and we acknowledge that.
Thank you for that.
And I appreciate the comments as well. I'm just going to make a comment just for my own self. I tried to respond to them, and it was probably the same email that I sent, to be honest with you, because it was the same kind of chain email, and I think I acknowledge that. There is work, kind of like what the mayor said, that's going on behind the scenes, but I'm always willing to talk to any constituent, no matter what, to try to improve, like, our city. So I think that hopefully, once the work gets done and we have something, that any voice that wants to be heard is heard. And I appreciate you just stepping up, you know, voicing your concerns today.
There is a coordinated group that is working together. These are These consist of nonprofits and people that are focused on the homeless issue here that also receive funding from COVID to mitigate and help to support those issues. So I also never have a problem. I can't answer 67 emails all within a few days now. But sitting down and talking with anybody about any issue we have in this community, because you may or may not be aware of the work that is going on currently and the funding that is being provided to facilitate that work. So, my guess is maybe not.
I'm glad to hear that there is work going on
Absolutely.
that, some of which I probably am not aware of. And what I'm actually asking, and what all 67 of us were asking, is for you to speak with your constituents, for you to speak with the people of Bowling Green, to speak and hear from people that have faced these housing issues themselves. And so I'm really grateful for the work that is happening, and I hope that you'll continue to include public input.
I would
in
encourage
crafting
anybody
solutions.
that wants to be a part of the conversation that is ongoing and going on to interject. And I want to say, is Hotel Inc. leading the charge on that? Yeah. So, Rondell Miller is all ears, and she would love to have the help because it does come from the community. It doesn't come from here. The help that's needed comes from the community. It's a community problem that the community should come together and solve, and they are, and they're trying, and they're working hard on it, and they are making a difference. So if any one of those 67 want to really get involved,
Absolutely.
I'm
and
sure
I
Rondell would love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah,
I
we're
have
in
a
touch.
Sorry, I just wanted to just ask a follow-up question. So I remember that at our retreat in January that we had, with Mayor Alcott's request to host a work session on affordable housing and homelessness. So I know that we all agreed to host a work session, so hopefully that's good news. And I'm hopeful that we are working towards hosting that soon. I haven't heard anything from staff about when that's going to be put on the schedule, but the plans were set in motion in January for us to host a conversation about this because it was several of our priorities when we ran for this term that we really wanted to address that together. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful, like you are, that we will have that conversation soon. And so thank you for encouraging us to make sure we host that conversation as soon as possible.
And part of that is we will have the stakeholders involved that are actually doing the majority of the lion share work for the community. And, I have taken time to talk to those individuals, to talk to the private orgs, and I don't have it all together. I'll just be honest, but it's work and effort that it will take community stakeholders to make a difference from what happens here differently in Bowling Green from where it's happening across our great nation, because it is happening from shore to shore.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for putting that information out there, Dana. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor Alcott, for being honest about where you're at, just in this process here. And I do want to ask, though, this is not an individual problem, right? Like, this is a systemic problem in Bowling Green, and so a coordinated effort to resolve it is incredibly helpful. Having our services coordinated is incredibly helpful. And I'm wondering what policy solutions you all are exploring so far to ensure that residents remain in their homes, don't become unhoused, and can afford to have a high quality of life in Bowling Green, as all of us deserve.
Housing vouchers that have actually happened since we've been on this commission, and the work that has been put into the housing vouchers has been probably one of our greatest testaments, is that we have people willing to help themselves, but they need to be able to bridge that gap. And I'd like to see, if we can continue to get more resources to help with that, then, we will continue to do that. We are looking at a second round of what is called the American Relief Act. It's what we knew as CARES, and that's what was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. And those are resources that haven't come into our care. However, they are resources that were used in the last round to help subsidize those housing vouchers, which were increased.
So you're committed to using your CARES money that the city is receiving to increase the affordable housing vouchers?
I don't want to state, but we have, as a body, have influence on that.
Okay. Well, I certainly would ask you to explore that option. And I also wanted to bring to your attention, myself, my friend that was with me, who wasn't able to stay past 2 hours for this meeting, unfortunately, but we've been in contact with folks that are currently facing eviction. And one of the problems that we are seeing repeatedly is that even if you have a Section 8 voucher, even if you are receiving housing assistance, your landlord can refuse that funding. So the discrimination based on source of income is a huge barrier for people. So even if we have this sort of funding available, if landlords aren't taking it, people can still end up unhoused. So one solution that folks have proposed that I encourage you all to explore as well is a ban on discrimination based on source of income, so that people that are receiving these vouchers, that are receiving this assistance, can actually put it to use, because currently landlords don't have to accept it.
I'm unsure if that is a provision that we can pass at a city level or if that's a statewide, but I would love to look into it. Would you mind sending me the information that you have on it?
Absolutely, happy to.
And send it to me as well. It's something that maybe when we schedule the work session, we could try to get done. I know there's talk of that work session that we had at the strategic goal planning that hopefully we can move on and invite some parties there that we discussed, and invite any party that wants to be heard. And I would love for you to be there if possible, because I do think that it's important for somebody who's basically, hey, I'm a poor kid, I don't want to get off script, but I grew up poor. I understand what it was like to basically have a single parent and face eviction and go from one house to the next. And we know 2020 was a bad year for so many people. So I would love to hear from the people that it actually affects. Mm-hmm. Because we know that if we don't do anything about it, that the homeless rate is going to substantially go up.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm going to say this, my world surrounds around workforce, a lot. Working with human resource managers, working with small companies, trying to recruit and bring folks in. I don't know if you looked around town, but we got a workforce board that offers free training and development. We've got every business in this community desperate for a body. We need to teach people to help themselves along with assistance when they need a leg up. I drive down Russellville Road earlier today, and the sign from Hardee's said, "Is anybody out there willing to work?" Okay? I mean, they're having sign-on bonuses at McDonald's, free tuition for the university. I drove through the Southern Kentucky Industrial Park on Nashville Road. Almost every single manufacturer has open interviews from 2 to 4 every day. They're desperate for people to get to work. It's time we all get back into the economy. And I'll say this too. Folks that took off the 15 months, and I respect if you're, concerned with the virus, and I respect all of that, but they're going to have a hard time being marketable after being out of work for 15 months. Your skill set, things are moving ahead, and so I want to encourage those folks to get out and take that work, take care of themselves mentally and physically, and get involved in something productive.
Absolutely.
And so-
I'm aware that, there's huge gaps in between, there's a huge number of positions available.
9,000.
Massive number. I'm
And
well aware.
These are good discussions. Mrs. Knight, we appreciate your comments. I've exceeded your time. The commissioners have added input. It's not our normal rules of engagement. However, your comments are being understood, and there is going to be a planning session for this, and when we have a planning session, it's open to the public and knowledge of that.
Fantastic. I hope that you'll explore some of the solutions that I suggested. I appreciate having conversation. It's really, really good to just have some back and forth with y'all, so
Mayor, may
it's
I
very
add just
refreshing.
one last thing?
We have another person on the agenda to speak.
I understand.
It's Amanda Bevan, that's my friend that left, that wasn't able to stay for the entire
It's Amanda
session.
Bevan has
Yeah.
left? All right,
Yes.
thank you. Go
But
ahead.
the only thing I was going to add, and respectfully, I do agree with Commissioner Perigin. Hey, but when my mother was facing eviction, she worked at Holly's. She was laid off. Then she had to clean up the hospitals. And she also worked 3 and 4 different jobs. That McDonald's that's over there, they used to be called Kenny Rogers Roastery. She was working at the hospital, plus working at Kenny Rogers, plus working seasonal work, and she couldn't pay everything that she could. So I get it. You could work, and sometimes the rent could just be too high, and the other bills could be high. So I invite anything. So sometimes workforce helps. However, we got to make sure that people can afford, certain.
Absolutely. I
the
wonder
living
how many
standard.
of those open positions would pay enough to meet the average
$23
rent.
an hour out at the Skip, out at the Southern Kentucky Industrial Park.
That's a good paying job.
Oh, my
Absolutely.
goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. This concludes our meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is May 4th, 2021. Thank you very much.